This is the Outlander Club, a Rebel Scum podcast. Everyone has a story. Here are those Star Wars stories. Don't forget to join us on Patreon for exclusive bonus content and early access. Here's your host, James Razile.
No, I'm telling you, it's going to be great. When have I ever steered you wrong?
Hi everyone, I'm James Razile. Welcome to the Outlander Club. Today's guest is a published author, a producer at Wired, and a lifelong, die-hard Star Wars fan. You may never find a bigger fan than who I'm about to speak with, and that is Adam Lance Garcia.
Leave that to me.
We are one day closer to seeing Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And I have a special guest with me today here on the Outlander Club. I got Adam Lance Garcia joining me. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Thanks
How
for
are
coming
you?
here. I'm great.
My
I stole
pleasure.
your line. I stole your line.
No. I'm happy to share it. It's our line. Everyone gets to share that line.
Okay, fine. For the next month, I'm just gonna wake up every day, 5 a.m., and I'm tweeting that out before you. I'm gonna wake up just before you get a chance to do it, and I'm gonna undercut you and put that out on Twitter, and I'm gonna steal it as my own.
Well, but the people will know. They'll know.
Yeah. Well, first of all, nobody even looks at my Twitter, so it won't matter. Nobody will even see it.
That's probably for the best.
Yeah.
I wish.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter's it's a great place to be. I start to understand why everybody starts unfollowing people and blocking people every once in a while. I can see that. It's unfortunate, but it is. We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Star Wars. That's what we're talking about.
We're talking about Star Wars.
Yeah, and your Star Wars stories specifically, because we all have them. We all lived with them. It's been in our lives for 4 years, 2 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it's been, and that's what we're going to talk about. So to kick it off, I would just like to know where. I doubt you could answer this, but where and when did you first ever see Star Wars?
Well, I can say for certain that where it was, when it was, I can't say.
Yeah.
But where it was my parents' house. My parents recorded Return of the Jedi off TV. I'm fairly certain that was the one I watched first. Because I was, the movies were gone by the time I was born. At least not they were in theaters anymore. But it was one of those movies that I watched over and over again, and then like, oh, there's A New Hope, and oh, there's Empire Strikes Back, and I rewatched them over and over again. I do remember very vividly going to buy the VHS box set, the very first one, which I still own. The sort of like that really lovely artwork. I remember going to the Suncoast Video at Kings Plaza Mall in Brooklyn, New York, to buy that, and it was really exciting with my dad. I was like, these are mine. They're not like the ones that are taped off the screen. Yeah, and that. So to answer your question, like I don't remember the first time I saw it. For me, in a lot of ways, Star Wars was always there. It's just been a part of my life since memory is formed.
Yeah, I understand that, because I always joked that when I was an infant, my parents wouldn't hire a babysitter. They just put me on the couch, turn on Star Wars, and leave for 2 hours. That was it. Did you have any toys growing up? Like, I mean, I imagine you did, but the Star Wars toys. Anyone? Do you have a specific memory of maybe a playset or a figure that is near and dear to you?
So I remember very vividly my parents used to go to a lot of antique shows when I was a kid. So we'd like always go around, because my dad is a very big collector, and he would go out and buy a lot of things at antique shows and resell them. When eBay came around, he was really going nuts with that. But he had a really good sense for collectibles, so we always used to go to antique shows. And I remember very vividly buying the speeder bike from the original speeder bike at an antique show. Unfortunately, like that's been long gone because there was a Sandy got rid of it, and also like I wasn't careful because I was a kid and I lost all the bits and pieces of it. But I remember very vividly getting that when I was a young kid. It was a lot of little toys. Like I remember getting the very big butchy Luke Skywalker when that came out, when they started releasing new toys. I remember the Legos that came out. and this is not necessarily a Star Wars thing, but I do very vividly remember making oh God, what was it? It was a Lego set with there was like this Ice Planet Lego set, and it had all like, it was, and I still have it. It's still intact because I was very careful with it. This big spaceship, and there was like there's 3 characters it came with, and then the third one. So there was Luke, Leia, and Ben, and Adam, because of course Adam. And that was the characters, and those like, it was clear that like it was part of my life. I still have. My dad got me like I don't know if it's a real one or a replica, but it's a helmet of a stormtrooper, like life size, and then there's like a bit like a shoulder piece. I don't know where he got that. And then the one thing I still own, and I wonder what condition it's in, because it's in my parents' garage and I haven't sort of buried in the back. Around the time of Phantom Menace came out, there was a contest at Blockbuster Video, and it was for when it came out on VHS, to win a life-size Yoda. And my dad may or may not have given someone some money so I would win that. I have a life-size Yoda.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we used to have like a couple. We had like, it was nuts. But those are some of the things that I remember owning that I really remember and loved. But I will say though, like before I get beyond that, like the thing that really made me a big fan was the novels. So like it wasn't so much the action figures, it wasn't so much the toys, because I still have my original lightsaber, my toy one. It was the Luke's that goes like out. I still own that, but like the Jedi Prince books, that was my entry drug, because it was like I was my reading level at the time, and like, oh my God, there's stories afterwards. New Adventures with Luke, Leia, and Han. There was, the Thrawn trilogy. If I were to point to anything that I own that is near and dear to my heart, it's the novels. I have every single one. Let me revise that. I have about 90% of them. Okay. I don't have all the Young Jedi novels. I need to get those. I'm missing those. I don't have all the Junior Jedi Knight novels because I sort of had aged out by that point and I wasn't collecting them. But I do have like first edition of every single book that came out under the Phantom Spectra and the Del Rey eras. I loved Legends. I love what is now the EU. I love what was the EU is now Legends. Just I devoured that stuff, and it would be a understatement to say that was the reason why I became a writer. I'm a quasi-professional writer. I say quasi because it's not my full-time job, but I'm a published author. I do a lot of things because of those books, and it gave me a passion that I hold on to this day. And having become friends with some of the people behind the novels since then has been amazing, because it's like to get that insight to I like interviewing Timothy Zahn was one of those moments of like, holy crap, did I just do this? Like, this is the guy that, like, because of him, directly or indirectly, I write. Like, I put words in the paper because of this story, this idea. Like, one of the first things I did as a young kid was like write a parody Star Wars story script. It's called Mini Wars. It was basically like a low budget parody fan film. Never made it, but it was an idea. But I wrote I started writing fan fiction because of that. It was a fan fiction Star Wars novel that I wrote, and I never finished it, but I tried, and because of those novels, because of the EU. So that's I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, but before you got to novels, something had to guide you towards the novels.
Yeah.
So you had your figures and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to ask you, because you started with just, I think so many kids growing up in the 80s, probably the exact same way, Star Wars on VHS, but taped off TV. But yours was Return of the Jedi. Mine was, I guess, A New Hope. It would have been called still. So that's how it was. The exact same scenario was on TV. Oh my God, we missed part of it. There's a little bit of commercial in there and whatnot. So at what point was it when you bought that box set? When did you watch A New Hope and Empire? Was that close together, or did you wait?
No, I had. I'm pretty sure I had seen it before I bought the box set. I mean, it wasn't like it was probably like it was recorded off of HBO or something like that. It was one of those things where I, was watching it early on, so I just don't know where it came from. It just was. I just remember Return of the Jedi being first, and then everything else being second. And those are my cats. That's Puck.
Oh, you can't see them on the screen.
Yeah, you can't see them. Oh, yeah. This Puck. It's okay. You're fine.
Here, I'll move the cats in. I'll get a shot of the cats quickly. There, everybody can see the cats now. Awesome. 2 cats?
Yeah. We have 2 cats, yes. Puck, Christopher Noodles, and Pip and Thomas Copperfield.
How did they get into Star Wars anyway?
Oh, they're born into it.
Yeah. They have no choice.
They have no choice.
Okay, so after Return of the Jedi, I don't know if you ever watched Droids or Ewoks, those animated series.
I did, because we went to a lot of comic book shows. My dad, as I mentioned, was a collector, and he sold comic books. So we'd go to like the comic book cons before they were like what they are now.
Oh, wow.
But and there was like guys who had like hot copies of like things that were off TV, like, and they collected together. This is back, obviously, as we say this on YouTube, we're on YouTube at the moment, but back in the day, kids, things were not just easily found by a click of a link. What you had to find them, record them onto these things that are VHSs, which is sort of like a hard drive, but physical and has tape on it. And we had to. We had to there's collections of droids, there's collections of Ewoks. I think Ewoks was on TV at the time I was around, and there's also the holiday special that we just got VHS copies of. So yes, I did watch those.
Okay,
did I love them? Yeah.
I saw Ewoks on Ice. I've mentioned this, I think, every time I talk about Star Wars. I saw Ewoks on Ice, and I'm gonna take that memory to my grave, because that was my favorite thing ever, was watching Wicket skate around. You can't beat it. They should make a movie of that. I don't know. And like Disney, Lucasfilm, if you're listening, I don't know why you haven't done this yet. It's just money in the bank. My money only, but it'll happen. Okay, so after
we can make $10 Canadian out of this,
which is like 50 cents American. So that all happens. A cartoon. You go to all these conventions, but Star Wars in the mainstream kind of fades away. The spotlight goes. Did you go with it?
No. As in, like, did it fade did I leave it?
Did you leave it for maybe Ninja Turtles, all that stuff?
I mean, that was always, Ninja Turtles and stuff like that was part of my life, but like Star Wars was ever present. Like, as I mentioned, the novels kind of filled that gap for me. I read them voraciously. They were, for better or worse, the majority of what I read when I was a kid. And I was always like consuming that. I was playing all the video games. I was playing, it was so much a part of my life. We'd have lightsaber battles and stuff like that. It was, Star Wars never left. It was one of those things where you want to be part of this, Puck? You want to talk about this too?
That's awesome.
I like my best friend Jeff and Philip and I, was like, we kind of grew up around this small town within Brooklyn. It was like we were such Star Wars fans, so it was a big part of our lives. So it never left. It never sort of retreated from my mind. There were things that like I liked a lot during that period of time, like obviously like Ninja Turtles and Exo Squad and Mighty Max and stuff like that I watched and consumed and enjoyed. But there were always these new stories. And I think, if there's one that I always love about Star Wars in general, and the reason that like what I look for in the media that I consume and I write, I like stories that have large story worlds. And, I like that you can, what I think the expanded universe did was like, oh, there's more. There's always more. There's more avenues to kind of go through. And I think that's the great thing about Star Wars in general as a franchise, is that like not a lot is explained in the films. Very little is explained in the films, actually. Like a lot of the stuff that we know and that we know about Star Wars comes from like the West End games, like the old role-playing game from the 1980s. Like Akbar's backstory comes from the role-playing games. But Lucas and company, you know, created such a world that felt lived in and felt like there was so much to it that, you know, it allowed me to explore and keep on exploring Star Wars, keep on this galaxy far, far away. And that was the coolest thing about it, that I got to keep on reading stories, keep on exploring it. Like, oh, hey, here's a story about the Jedi thousands of years before. Here's stories of like, you know, what Luke is going to be doing when he's an old man, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like Jason and Jaina and Anakin and the New Jedi Order and all of that. Excuse me. It never retreated, because like I could play X-Wing, I could play TIE Fighter. I was always more of an X-Wing fan between the two. I know TIE Fighter is a better game. My brother and I played Rebellion. It was like a real-time strategy game, which you can buy on Steam, but it's only for PC, which is very frustrating for me. But it's that game we played so much, like every single day we played Rebellion, to the point that like we gamed the system that we always won, but it was a game that we just loved to play. So yeah, it never retreated. Yeah, and not at any points.
So you kind of like Star Wars. So what came first, the video game or the novels? Because can I take a guess, Mike? Because you're an interesting case because you're a writer and you love reading. Normally, I would say video games, but could it have been a novel for you?
I don't know the timing on this, so I don't know when like X-Wing and TIE Fighter came out, so I can't rightly recall when those came out. But I do very vividly remember reading the Jedi Prince novels first, and just falling in love with. And they're not good. Like I recently bought them because I think I lost my original prints in Sandy, unfortunately, along with like a first printing of the Star Wars novelization, which I'm still bummed about. Also, Empire Strikes Back Dixie Cups. I lost those too. I lost a lot of shit that day, but it's probably better for the basement basement space. No, but I recently rebought the Jedi Prince books and like this collected book, because I really want to read them again because they're so weird. They're so weird. We'll get to that in a second, but I do remember just like loving those books, and like Ken being the sort of like I could be Ken, like Luke can train me in the Lost City of the Jedi, which makes no sense at all. Like let's talk about this. Like it's funny. Like it's one of those like you can't believe people got away with telling these stories, and B, that people really like them. Like, and they like whatever issues you have with the new canon aside, the fact that someone was like, hey, what if there's a secret Jedi city underneath Yavin? Because why would of course Yavin, and it's all run by robots to protect this one Jedi child. Like, and we were like, yeah, that sounds great. Like, it sounds great, you know. But yeah, that was.
But isn't that Star Wars is so simple anyway, though? When like you said, everything is explained in video games and games and books and all that the movies, Star Wars itself is so simple. Yeah. That if for a child, you could totally buy that and buy into it because it's all make believe anyway. Yeah,
it's a fantasy. It's a fairy tale. It's you know, it could be whatever you want it to be. Yeah, well, not really, but you know what I mean.
It could be Star Wars as long as it's Star Wars.
It could be Star. Yeah.
All right, so those the books kind of kept you around.
Yeah.
Do you remember now hearing special editions are on their way? We are going to get the original movies back in the theater. How excited were you?
Okay, so I remember very vividly when I found out about the special editions, and that was one of those things where, you know, this is like the internet's still starting, but it wasn't really a part of our lives. I think it's around the same time I got a computer. That's like when like it was a compact Presario, and we had we had Prodigy and AOL. Like no one, like it was hard. Oh, actually, one thing that I did do, I did do a online role playing game called Lightsabers, where I was the GM, like in the chat rooms back in the day. So that was actually another thing I used to do. But I think that was like later on. So we're jumping ahead of it, but the special edition. So there's the United Artists Theater in Brooklyn. That was like the place that we all went. And again, I had no idea that the special editions were being made, because why would I? Like, I don't have the internet's not something I'm on, unlike today. And I'm not aware of these things. We're going to see a movie. I don't remember what movie it is. It doesn't even matter anymore. And it's like there's the TV set, right? Like for years that we're seeing the movies been on our TV screens. And I was like, what? And like, cause I'm excited. It's like Star Wars thing. What does this mean? And then like now, and like it's on the back on the big screen. And it's like, and it flies out. I fell to my knees screaming. I was so excited. I was like, I just couldn't believe that I was going to be able to see Star Wars on the big screen. I can't tell you how. Yeah, no, I was screaming. Of course you could tell how excited I was.
Did you see them opening night, or did you wait?
No, I didn't see. I don't know if I saw them opening night. I definitely saw all of them because, of course, I had to.
Oh yeah.
And I don't remember seeing A New Hope. Of course, I did. I remember seeing an Empire, but I most remember. I vividly remember seeing Return of the Jedi. Only because my friend turned to me during the Jedi Rock scene, like, "What is this?" like rock music, Star Wars. Like, what is going on? And yeah. I mean, that. So I do remember vividly seeing that. So yeah.
That was the only one I didn't get to see. My grandmother was very sick at the time, so I missed out on Return of the Jedi, and that's, for better or worse, that has always been my favorite Star Wars movie. Probably because that's the one. As a kid, I think that's the one that you. Yeah. So you know what, and I'm sticking with it my whole life. I'm like, I don't care. I could acknowledge which one I actually think is probably the best, but I'm going to stick with Return of the Jedi, and it's the only one I've never seen theatrically.
Oh man, well, I mean, I think that's one of those things where, like, I for example, like, I acknowledge that, like, Back to the Future Part 2 is inferior to Back to the Future Part 1. Like, Back to the Future Part 1 is the better movie. Yeah. But Back to the Future Part 2 is my favorite because it's like it does exactly what I want it to do. But it's the same thing. Like I think like I understand why people love The Return of the Jedi the most, because like it's a shit ton of fun to watch. Like it breaks down in my mind, like when you start like thinking about the story and like how it's structured and stuff like that. And especially when you start reading like the original plot line, the original like treatments. Like P.S. Like I spent a lot of time this year reading the J.W. Rinsler books, The Making of Star Wars. Those are gold mines, like just in terms of understanding the creative process, which is fascinating. Like it's so fascinating to see how the original Star Wars became like A New Hope, because it's almost like they're two completely different franchises. There's like similarities, like Mace Windu, but it was Mace Windy. Like names are very similar, and they come up in later, or eventually they come up again. Like Utapau, like that's stuff like that originates from the original treatments. But like Return of the Jedi, like you look at like some of the original stuff, and you're like, oh my god, that sounds so cool. Why didn't we do that? But yeah, Return of the Jedi is fun. It's great. It's like, but at the same time, like, yeah, like I'm like, yeah, I get critical of it. But yeah, easily. I think I just turned off my. Sorry, I actually turned off my. I don't know how that happened.
Turned your video. You're like, I'm ashamed. It's actually the best.
I'm
movie
ashamed.
ever.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Don't look at me. Don't look at me.
You know what? My dream is for one of these new era Star Wars films. I wanted it to be in Maz's castle. But an Ewok and a Gungan in a cantina somewhere in the back, just having a conversation. Not the main focus of the scene, just like the camera panning around. And you're like the two most hated creatures in Star Wars having a conversation.
Which is crazy for each generation. Like, the original generation, like the Ewoks, and then like they hated the Gungans. And then like you talk to kids now and they're like, I love Jar Jar. And you're like, really? Like they're like, yeah, like it was the first Star Wars I ever saw, and like Jar Jar Binks is the greatest thing ever, and I love him. And you're like, it's just a movie about space wizards intended for children.
Lucas knew what he was doing. If nothing else, he knew exactly what he was doing with his franchise.
Yep.
Okay, so see the special editions you've seen, but now comes the biggie. This is probably for 20 years almost, this will be the biggest piece of news that you'll see about Star Wars, and that is George Lucas with his yellow notepad. Yeah. I'm writing Star Wars Episode 1.
Yeah. That was, I was 16 at the time, and, well, like, I think he announced it, and I was about 14. And it was so exciting. It's like we're finally understanding what came before, what happened before, and I think one thing that and again, we've sort of touched on this before, what is so exciting about Star Wars from the very concept, the way it's presented, like they don't explain anything. They don't explain what the Clone Wars are. They don't really give the backstory of like how Anakin fell. They don't really talk about the destruction of the Jedi Order, the Republic. They're names that are just kind of thrown out there, and a lot of it is us sort of trying to figure out, like us imagining what those could be, and then we're finally going to see it. We're going to see a young Obi-Wan Kenobi. We're going to see a young Anakin Skywalker, and all like it was thrilling. And I will admit, like, I saw that movie 10 times in theaters. My dad, God bless him, like I went to the first Star Wars celebration, right when it was like the lead up to that. My parents were like, you know what? I was like, I really want to go. And they said, like, Adam, your grades are really good. You're doing so well in school. You don't ask for anything. Like, we'll fly you out. Wow. And, like my dad and I went to the first Star Wars celebration in Denver. And it was really cool. That was really exciting. And then my dad took me to we skipped school. I skipped school. My dad again took me out. Like, again, your grades are really good. You're great. I know this means a lot to you. So I went opening day to go see Episode 1 with my dad. And then I saw it like 9 more times. After school, my buddies and I would go, and we all screamed and Obi-Wan, with Obi-Wan Kenobi and stuff like that. It was just, it's funny because my relationship with that film, with Phantom Menace, has evolved over time. I think I loved it. It was, to my mind, when I was 16, it was the best Star Wars film, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it was the first new Star Wars that I saw in theaters. Yeah. And I sort of cooled on it with each progressive film. I thought Attack of the Clones was better than Phantom Menace, and I thought Revenge of the Sith was better than the Phantom Menace. And then I just felt the entire prequel trilogy was kind of a mess. And then I've sort of come around to feeling like the Phantom Menace is probably the strongest. One of my old coworkers at Yahoo kind of gave a good case as to why it's the strongest. It was for a host of reasons, because it's how an empire, how a society can fall with one small thing. There's a lot of really good big ideas in the Phantom Menace that aren't necessarily executed well. Mm-hmm. And I think I'll say this, as someone who's made films and written stories professionally for a decade or so, there are some stories that you go in knowing everything you're going to say, and you know exactly how it's going to work, and you come away with it and you're like, this is exactly what I wanted to say. Some of my I point to a story I did with this anthology called Occupied Earth, where the aliens invaded and they won, and I had the story, and It's called Traitor, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm like, I know exactly what I'm going to say with every single thing. And I wrote it, and I still point it as one of my best writing. And I feel like that was what happened with Lucas in Phantom Menace. He knew exactly what he wanted to say, knew exactly how he wanted to do it. It's very much the film that he envisioned. Is it the best film in the world? No, but I think it is Lucas's most pure vision for a film. I think that, like with Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, there's a lot of not necessarily corners that he cut, but I think he definitely bent to the will of what fans wanted in a lot of ways. Like, oh, well, fans want this and fans want that. And he sort of compromised his vision in a lot of ways for the later prequels. Whereas I think Phantom Menace is just like, nope, this is my movie. This is the one I want to make. And, I think that in this, like, and this is not a fair comparison, but it's sort of like The Room, by Tommy Wiseau's The Room, where it's like, what is amazing about The Room it's not a good movie, but it is one man's vision. It is clearly one man's vision. And I think the Phantom Menace is, let me be clear, the Phantom Menace is a significantly better film than The Room. But I think what is so endearing about both the Phantom Menace and The Room, and some other examples, like any Wes Anderson film, any in a lot of ways, any Rian Johnson film, any Edgar Wright film, it's like, this is a person's vision of this story. It is their unique take on it. And I think that is very clear in the Phantom Menace. That's what makes them so endearing. That's what makes them so exciting. That's why we look back at them more fondly than I'd say like Revenge of the Sith or Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, I actually love Phantom Menace. Anybody that watches the YouTube channel that listens to the podcast knows I love the Phantom Menace. It is, when I left the theater, I think like you, I was like, this is my favorite Star Wars movie. There was no, I was like, no, it's better than Return of the Jedi, better than Empire, it's better than them all. It was my favorite. And over time, you kind of, reassess it and take a look at it. But, and I brought this up a few times before, but I'll tell you is when my wife and I were dating, one day she randomly said, I want to watch Star Wars. And I was like,
yeah,
done. So I grabbed I grabbed my 6-disc Blu-ray, and I put in the Phantom Menace. I didn't say anything. I just put in the Phantom Menace. And I was like, let's see what she says. And I hit play. And we're 10 minutes into it, and she goes, no, I wanted to watch one with Vader. And I said, this is Vader. And we watched all 3 prequel movies back to back to back in one day. Yeah. And then when it was over, she was like, oh, I want more stories in that time. And that was something that always, like, it's still something that I think about. I'm like, that's how, like, if you go into it from this other point of view, this other perspective on them, your takeaways are much different than you and I would be over time too. Yeah. But I don't want to talk about the prequels anymore. I want to talk about that very first Star Wars Celebration, because that is super cool, and I've heard nightmares about it. Like fun nightmares, weather-wise mostly. Yeah.
I mean, the weather was terrible. I do remember that. I do remember hearing stories of people dressed up as Klingons and getting booed. It's funny. It's like, I remember, for whatever reason, my memories of Celebration are very blurred. I remember seeing Anthony Daniels like shaking everyone's hand, waiting in line. I remember getting my my little like booklet that they gave out signed by everyone. Meeting a Steve Sansweet for the first time, that was really cool. The only time, actually, now that I think about it. I just remember being like in a place where like, oh wow, like everyone likes Star Wars, and that's really cool. I wish I had a related story, but like I was 16 with my dad, so there was like, it was just like, let's see freebies we can get, like let's walk around a lot. I have more stories about Celebration this year than I do about a Celebration back then, just because how ingrained I've become in the Star Wars fan community.
And like you said, 16, you're at this big, huge Star Wars thing, and you're probably very overwhelmed and just excited. Yeah. And sometimes that does cloud your memory over time. But I mean, the takeaway from that is you were there and you know it, and it was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I was not there. Just everyone else. Okay, so Phantom Menace comes out. It's the greatest movie ever. Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit before we started recording, and it was mostly me being spoiled into this one. I was on websites and just reading. I'm like, oh, and this is going to happen, and that's going to... I mean, I already know that Anakin's turned to the dark side, but I had to know everything else that was going to happen. Yeah. Did you fall into that trap as well, or did you go in fairly clean?
I think I had a lot of things spoiled for Phantom Menace. Like, I remember hearing the audio binks when they're on the in Otabongo underwater, like, we saw here. Like, I remember. I don't remember. I didn't have a lot spoiled with Attack of the Clones. Oddly, a lot of my memories of Attack of the Clones are, being really concerned that my girlfriend at the time, who was a Star Trek fan, would like it, because she was my first girlfriend, and we did it. And and that was my biggest concern of the time. I did not get a lot spoiled as much as I thought. I think one thing that is interesting about the Attack of the Clones and all the other things is that since we knew how the story was ending, in some ways it sort of took away from some of the surprises, but I don't know. It didn't really spoil me that much.
That's awesome, because I can tell you how to ruin a movie for yourself is by having it all spoiled before you walk out. Like, well, there's nothing new.
Man.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
3 years go by. You've got Revenge of the Sith. This is the big one now. We know where this is. We know where it's going.
Yeah.
We know where it's heading.
Yep.
We're excited for it.
Yep.
How excited were you for it? Did you see it the minute you could? Did you? Because now you would have been.
Yeah.
You would have been older now. You were like 20.
I was about 20. Yeah, I was I think
20?
a senior in college. I remember going to see it with my boss. I went to NYU. I was in college, and about that time, that was like that. It was in high school. I was a Lucas apologist because everyone hated the prequels except me, and I love the prequels. And how do you like these movies? They're terrible. I'm like, the Star Wars.
And actually, so can I just interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
Because I'm just, what you're saying now is bring me back to you reading those novels when you were younger. How you're like, these stories were terrible, but now you're talking about the prequels, which everyone's saying is terrible. You're like, but it's Star Wars. Your mentality has never changed towards the franchise, and that you love it for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of stories that I am critical of. Like, I think that, like, we all talk about the Crystal Star, the Expanded Universe, being like the worst Expanded Universe one, but for my money, it's Planet of Twilight. I remember, like, I read that for school because I had got away with, like, oh, you have to read a sci-fi book. I'm like, well, sir. I was like, this is terrible. I remember, like the whole Callista trilogy, that was just, I think Planet of Twilight was a part of the Darksaber stuff, which was kind of wonky. The Corellian trilogy wasn't very good, and I couldn't even finish. And with the prequels, it's like, I love them because they were Star Wars. They were flawed beasts. They are flawed beasts. But they're Star Wars. And, I sort of appreciate, one thing that I love about franchises in general, the thing that I sort of look towards, it's like, I like it when they get weird. I like it when they explore ideas. One of my favorite series, TV series, is Fringe. And what I think I loved about that series is that it tried to do a lot of things and it failed frequently, but it tried to do something. And Star Wars does it a lot. It tries stuff. It doesn't always work, but they're trying. And I think that's really exciting. And but like, when it comes to Star Wars in general, it's Star Wars. It's like, I just like, look, for example, like, I'm not the biggest fan of Rebels. I'm not the biggest fan of, I haven't played a lot of the video games recently. I think Rogue One is overrated, but I love them. I still love them. Like, I support people who love those things, and I think it's great. But like, it's fucking Star Wars. Like, just enjoy what you enjoy. I think there's so many ways to be a Star Wars fan. Yeah. I think there's so many ways to enjoy this, the stories that are being told, that, like, if you start getting mad about it, like, there's a line in Justified, like, if you, like, you meet like an asshole, like you go through your day, you meet an asshole, he's an asshole, right? You go through your day meeting like everyone you meet is an asshole, then you're the asshole. And I feel like that's a good way to think about life. Like, look, if you just like accept that people like things differently, and you know there are aspects of Star Wars that you appreciate more than others, or whether even if it's Star Trek or Farscape or Doctor Who or whatever you're into, it's like there's always going to be something that you don't necessarily love, and there's always gonna be something that you love more than others, and things that you're critical of and things that you're less critical of. But just accept you like it. Like just like it. Just why get angry about it? It's just a goddamn movie franchise. It's whatever.
I don't know anybody that's gotten mad at Star Wars ever.
No.
They're all flawless.
Yeah, but to that point, it's like it's what is someone who unabashedly loved the prequels during my youth and was mocked relentlessly for liking the prequels. It's like I just liked it. Like that was it. I just liked it, and it's like. So when I went to the point is like I went into Revenge of the Sith, and like everyone's like down on Star Wars, down on like Lucas, down on just enjoying this franchise. But my boss was a big fan of Star Wars, and his wife, who was also my other boss, was a big fan when I was working at NYU. These were my professors and my bosses, and we went to go see Revenge of the Sith like opening weekend. And I remember like the audience were fucking nuts. They were like jumping up and applauding and going crazy. This guy in front of me, he jumps up and he's just like, "Oh, that Blue Empire out of the water." I'm like, "Damn right, did we?" High five, and everyone was in love with it. It's funny, and again, it's weird how like this narrative around these films has changed, and that's another conversation about like how subjective media, how stories evolve with time. But yeah, I remember loving every single second.
So now Revenge of the Sith has come and gone. You've given your high fives and all that. Yeah. But now is what I call the second dark time. The Empire has officially taken over. George Lucas has said repeatedly, "No, Star Wars is done. It's all over. There's no more Star Wars ever happening. He's done. He's told his story." There were little pieces being released, like TV shows being worked on. Yeah. But theatrically, Star Wars was over. Did you maintain your fandom, or did you go hardcore into Doctor Who?
No. So I will say that. So just real quickly, Doctor Who is a relatively recent thing. Doctor Who was one of those things where I discovered after college. It was about 2010, 2011. My roommate at the time was like, "Hey, you like sci-fi, you should watch Doctor Who." And I'm like, I had watched the Eighth Doctor premiere back in 1997 or 96. And I remember liking it, but like, it didn't go anywhere. But like Doctor Who was like, that's a recent addition. But that was sort of like someone saying like, "Hey, you really like cocaine. Have you tried meth?" It's like, oh no. No, during after around that time, so there's a couple of things that were going on. I was really into the other fandom I was really a big part of while the films, like in between Star Wars, I was really into was Farscape. Because after the Phantom Menace came out, I was really looking for more sci-fi, and I was like, I need more. I clearly like was seeing a Phantom Menace in theaters was like, oh, I really love this. Not franchise, but I love this genre. I want more of this genre. So I started watching Farscape, which was a show on sci-fi produced by Jim Henson, and I was really addicted to that. I went hardcore on that. I started like my own website, the Farscape Encyclopedia Project. I was really, really, really into that, and that sort of like helped me. Like during the periods of time when like Star Wars was like the movies were not coming out, but throughout all that I read the novels, and during the second Dark Times, it was like, I was reading the New Jedi Order. I was still a fan, but I think after After the end of Revenge of the Sith, I did finish reading the New Jedi Order because I had to finish that because I was sort of like one of those people who wanted to get the whole series so I can like binge read it. I would wait for like trilogies to come out. I just read straight through all of them. And then I was like, you know what, I've done all I've been reading of Star Wars novels. I really need to take a break. And I read like the Dark Tower series and things like that. But it was always there. I mean, it would, you know, I was still buying all the novels. I was still reading them here and there. I, you know, still collect things, whether it be toys or stuff like that. But it was sort of like it had more of a down period. I would say it was sort of like it was always there, but it wasn't as present as it was leading up to the end of Revenge of the Sith. Like it was sort of like, again, I'm still buying the books. I'm still reading the books. I'm buying things, I'm collecting things, but I would say that like it was just a bit more muted because it's like we didn't think there was anything coming. I mean, I went to go see Clone Wars in theaters, and that was fine. I was like, and I accepted it for what it was. It's like, oh, this is 3 episodes stitched together. Mm-hmm. This is fine for a pilot. It's not a good theatrical film, but it's fine. I, you know, enjoyed the Clone Wars as it came out. You know, I think the show improved over time, and I think that it really became a better series as like it became a really good series as it progressed. And I remember sometimes being like, oh wow, that's messed up. That's kind of what I was hoping for in some of the prequels. But yeah, I would say it was always there, maybe a bit more muted in a lot of ways. And I think that's like was the funny thing is like my girlfriend thinks I'm more into Doctor Who than Star Wars is because like when she met me, there was no new Star Wars. There was nothing really coming out during that period of time. But there was a lot of Doctor Who content coming out. So I was like consuming that and discussing about that a lot. And then and then like they announced the new films, and that was sort of again like it's like there's been an awakening, and there was definitely a reawakening in my case. So, but yeah.
Did you ever go to a celebration after
no, the first
Phantom and then before the Disney era?
No, just because it was like, yeah, it was, you know, I was a poor 20-something year old, you know, it didn't make financial sense to go to these things. You know, I was a poor college student, then a poor 20-something year old. And it wasn't until the one in 2017 that I was able to go to professionally that I was able to go back to Celebration. There was definitely a lot of FOMO going on, but it's also like, it was also during that period of time where like, as much as I like the Clone Wars, as much as I really appreciate what they did and what it's done for that era, and for those characters, like Ahsoka is one of the best additions to the canon, and Ashley Eckstein is just the sweetest person in the world. You know, I think that it's weird to say this, but like Star Wars wasn't being made for me, but that's always true. Like Star Wars isn't being made for me, it's always being made for the next generation, a younger generation. And it was stuff that, while it is very good, and while Clone Wars, like I said, Clone Wars is one of the strongest additions that Lucas gave to the canon, and I think Filoni's involvement was great. I remember the micro series as well was also excellent. I think that it wasn't necessarily being made with me in mind, and I understood that, and I'm like, this is definitely more younger skewing than I am, and I like it for what it is, but I wasn't like consuming it in the same way that I was the novels or stuff like that. It's just sort of like I felt for a time that I sort of like not necessarily aged out of Star Wars, because I don't think I've ever aged out of Star Wars. It was just more like it wasn't the primary in my mind, because it's like there wasn't a lot of stuff coming out that was, you know, what I wanted out of it. And I was like, I'm like, that's totally fine. That's cool. There are new Star Wars fans coming out. And like, I had my prequels, I had my original trilogy, that I have my books, and like, it's fine. Like, I'm happy with what I have. And like Clone Wars is like this cool addition that I get to, I was still buying the Blu-rays and still watching them. Like, this is very good. I'm not like super in love with it, but like there's lightsabers, that's great. Yeah, I'm happy.
Maybe that's what Rogue One was missing, was more lightsabers for you.
No. I and we could talk about Rogue One and like, we'll get to that. We'll talk about Rogue One.
Yeah, we will. Because I was just making a joke, but it is something that I'm curious about for the future of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So 2012.
Yeah.
All our minds are blown up. I was super excited about the obviously Disney purchasing Lucasfilm, because
I wasn't.
No, okay, I want to know why. I was, because I was looking at it from the Marvel perspective, how they achieved that. I mean, that was only 4 years in, but that was my mentality. And also, I'm a huge, I love Disney movies, but so I was like, that's so cool. All right, so you weren't, and this is getting juicy. Let's go, Star Wars fan.
No, I wasn't surprised, because I had heard, it wasn't rumors, because it was not a rumor, it was a fact. I had heard from people within the industry that Lucas was planning on selling to Disney, and I was like, really? I'm like, that doesn't track. Like, why Disney? It's like, because he thinks they could take care of it better. Mm-hmm. And I will say, like, if you look at like the making of Star Wars, I'm not sure if it's Empire, Return of the Jedi, or the original Star Wars, but like he does mention like he wants it to be Disney. Like he does sort of imply that like it's Disney is the next, like he probably would sell to Disney, or Disney he would have loved to have worked with Disney producing it. Yeah. So like, again, and I won't say who it was, and I won't say when I heard it, but it was before the sale. But yeah, I knew it was coming. It was still shocking that it did happen. But I think, the thing that people need to remember, the reason why he sold it was that Lucasfilm wasn't making a profit. Like, it wasn't like the licensing was there, but it was a downtime for Star Wars. Lucas was, he was burnt out by the fan reaction to the prequels, which I think we need to underline. Like, the fans, there was a section of the fans that were terrible to him, and are still sort of terrible to him to this day about their perception of the prequels. And Lucas, there was a combination of like, I just don't want to do this anymore, a combination of like, I think that Disney can handle this franchise better, and it was also a way of making sure that everyone he employed at Lucasfilm would have a job. Like, and that is something that I think that is really missed, is that the way the sale happened was to protect all his employees. Like, there's a reason why everyone who was working, like, unless people have left based on their own choice, like, he hired Kathleen Kennedy on to help over, because like they had worked together a lot, and Kathleen Kennedy is a very talented producer who has produced some of the greatest films that you've grown up and loved. But he hired her on, and then because he was that way, like there was someone to be a steward of the ship, and then the sale happened. And the sale happened to make sure that like everyone who was working there was still employed. Like, that Disney couldn't come in, or whoever bought the company couldn't come in and just fire everybody and lay everyone off. He's like, no, he's protecting these employees, and like that's something that like a lot of people seem to not know, is like how good a boss Lucas was and how giving he was to his employees. And that was a big part of the sale, was to help the brand, help Star Wars. Is like, all right, Star Wars can sort of live. Disney has the infrastructure to make sure that Lucasfilm is protected. That company within the company could be like they have the money to support Lucasfilm, and then they can expand the franchise in ways that he alone could not do. And again, like it was to protect his employees and make sure that Lucasfilm would keep on going after him. Yeah. So I was surprised by it. And I wasn't surprised by it. I was surprised that it was happening, because I'm like, there's no way. I just couldn't see him selling. But then like having known that it was a possibility, it was like, oh wow, it actually did happen. That, but I think the thing that shocked me the most is like, oh my God, I'm getting episode 7. And like, that is, I'm remembering that feeling of just being like, the one thing I wanted more than everything else, like the thing that the stuff that I find most interesting about the the Star Wars franchise, Star Wars era, the era that the Star Wars era that has enraptured me the most has been the post Return of the Jedi era. That's because that's a lot of what the Legends were, a lot of what the expanded universe was. But I also find intrinsically interesting what happens after the heroes win. Like, what is that story? The heroes have won. What is next? And oh my God, I get to see that. I get to see what happens to Luke. I get to see what happens to Han and Leia. There was a moment of being very bummed that I'm like, wait a minute, all the books I've read are not canon. All the stuff, all those years of stories that I've like put in and loved mean nothing. That sucks. But at the same time, more Luke, more Han, more Leia, you know. And I will say, like, I know I'm monologuing, but like, let's be honest, like, I know this for a fact that whether Lucas produced the sequels or Disney produced the sequels, the expanded universe would have been ignored. Yeah. So, like, it might have been like a vague past, but like, yeah, like Luke wasn't gonna marry. Like Ben Skywalker was not gonna be a thing. Yeah, so it was weird, like just being like, yeah. So yes, I'm sorry, I'm monologuing.
No, don't apologize. So I want to ask, as a reader, as an avid reader, like you just said, and how in 2013 they said all those books, nope, they don't exist. I want to know so you said, you know, you kind of bummed about that.
Yeah.
But my feeling on it was, like, I agree. That obviously was never going to be. And I think George Lucas always said, like, he never really considered those canon. Like, he was never really, like, he was never going to be handcuffed to those. I think he made changes sometimes just to be like, no, I call the shots here. Yeah. But I want to ask you if you think ending the Legends run, the EU, was a choice that maybe you would make, or not the right choice, because who are we to say that? Would you have made that choice, or would you have said, we will continue these stories under this Legend banner, like they did with what's that, the video game, the old
Knights of the Old Republic?
Yes, it was Knights of the Old Republic. That game, they're like, this exists, it's not canon. Right. Do you think they could have gone that route and said, hey, we could do this?
Yeah. So let's start with the fact that I think that, let me step back and say that I was bummed to find out that all the stuff I read was no longer canon, even though it never really was. Never really was canon, let's be honest. Like, I was bummed that, like, it didn't count. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've worked in some licensed media, and especially with Star Wars, it makes a lot of sense for them to not be beholden to novels that, statistically speaking, was read by the minority of the audience. Who in their right mind would say, yeah, well, Chewbacca died, so we can't use him. Let's make a new Star Wars without Chewbacca. Because that's what the majority of the audience wants, is a Star Wars film without Chewbacca.
That's what I've been saying.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I think from a creative standpoint, it made a lot of sense to break free. Like, Star Wars isn't Doctor Who, where it can sort of soft reboot. You know, you can't, like, Doctor Who doesn't allow you to... Doctor Who allows you to, like, continue the narrative, but basically have an entirely new cast, and it's still with the same show. Star Trek has the ability to, because its second series was a generational jump, allows them to do that. But, like, I just don't think Lucasfilm, I think the creators could incorporate all the disparate Legends material, because it's kind of crazy. Like, a lot of that stuff like, it's like the Bible, like a lot of stuff contradicts itself, and, like, you know, you're like, this thing contradicts that thing, but this thing also says that thing. You know, it made sense from a creative standpoint. Do I think they should have continued it? I don't. I think they can revisit it later. I think at the time, and mind you, this is only a 4 or 5 year period we're talking about. Yeah. This is 2012. Like that was when A New Dawn started, right? It was 2012.
Was it 12 or
Or
13? I think it was 13.
it was 14.
14, yes.
It was
14.
14. We're talking about a 5-year period, like, which in the grand scheme of things is not very long. We're talking about where they're like, look, I think that if they had done Legends concurrently with the new canon, it would have created brand confusion. I think, again, Star Wars is not Star Trek. You can't have Star Trek has since day one had a parallel sort of universe in the novels, and it's always sort of been there. Doctor Who has also had the same thing where you have the TV show, the audio dramas, the novels, and if that sort of universe is sort of built on, like, if you so choose, the audio dramas are canon. If you so choose, the novels are canon. There's nothing in, as long as A doesn't disagree with B, like, they can all sort of exist. Star Wars was built in such a way that the novels are all part of this ongoing chronology. And I think, like, if you're a newbie, right? If you're someone who's like, wow, I really like episode 7. I really want to read more. I want to read stuff about these characters. And you pick up a book that says, like, Han Solo's son, and like, oh, this must be about Kylo Ren, and it's about Jason Solo. If you're not well read in, it's just like, wait, what? This is a new story that has nothing to do with this other news story that I love.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, from a creative standpoint and from a brand management standpoint, it made sense to end Legends, or at least put it on hiatus. I mean, we already have new Legends stories coming out. The comics did one recently, but it's like, I think it made sense. It allowed the creators to do more. It allows the Lucasfilm to sort of reboot. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Great.
I know I'm talking. You said an hour, and it's like we're already an hour and a half. I'm very verbose. Sorry.
I'll get this going. All right. So you don't play much of the new video games, so Battlefront I won't even talk to you about. Were you at least a little excited about Battlefront? First new Star Wars video game, the new one, and
Yeah, I was excited about it. I think it was like my problem was that what turned me off to it is just like, as I'm a very casual gamer, like very casual, like I'm buying a Switch this year. Like that's my big plan, to just get a Switch now. My girlfriend doesn't really enjoy video games. And when I'm home, like I want to spend time with her, or, write, or watch TV with her. And it's like, video games didn't become a big part of, it hasn't been a big part of my life. And then on top of that, it's like, oh, you need a subscription. Oh, you need to like play against like all these people. I just want a story. Just give me a freaking story so I can play. So like I'm looking, like, I'm tempted to get Jedi Fallen Order, but like I have a PS3. I'm gonna wait till the PS5.
Yeah, you're kind of missing out on the PS4 now. Yeah.
So it's like, like I was excited about the idea of it, but like the cost around it. In addition to just the gameplay wasn't something that I was interested in. Like, I played it a couple of times and like, oh, screw this. Like I step out and like some 16-year-old shoots me. I'm like, this is not what I want out of a video game. This is not what I personally want out of a video game. Not to discount what other people enjoy, but like, this is not what I want. So yeah, I liked it. Yeah. I like the idea.
I think Fallen Order, which I've been playing for a week, is
nice.
I wish. Is when people listen to this or watch this. I think that's gonna. It looks like that's gonna grab a lot of people back in. Game. I was into Battlefront. I really enjoyed it. I played with my wife. There was this on the first Battlefront. There was a survival mode where you didn't have to play online, and it was just us. And then waves of stormtroopers would come at you and attack. And we would just play that because we're not really. We're also like you. I just got a Switch like a couple months ago. Very casual gamers. Like, I put on a Mario game and I'll play it for half an hour. I'm like, okay, see you tomorrow. Like, and that's it for me. Yeah. So that's where I am. Force Awakens. It's hitting the screen. Finally hitting the screen. You didn't go to that Star Wars Celebration though.
I didn't. No, I didn't. But I remember seeing that in the theater, and it was like, I remember the first time I heard Luke's voice, like the Force is strong in my family. You have that power too. I was like, like it was like hearing Luke for the first time. I remember going to see John Wick, to go see the trailer and being like, oh my God, like what is going on? And seeing the Falcon for the first time again. Yeah, God, that movie, that movie, even though it's like a New Hope Redux, which it is, but so is Phantom Menace in a lot of ways. It's so infinitely rewatchable. Like I've rewatched that movie countless times. Yeah, I just remember being really just. I think before we get into discussing the movie, just discussing the anticipation of it. I think the thing that really was so exciting, and I mentioned this before, it's like I loved the post Return of the Jedi era, and I loved the idea of Episode 7. I always talked about this a lot. Like Episode 7 seemed implausible. Like it just seemed like there's no way we're getting Episode 7. And then so it's because we're not getting Episode 7. Like Episode 8 is just frankly impossible. It's never gonna happen. And that like Episode 9 was like, there's no such like, why do we even think about an Episode 9? Because we're not getting an Episode 7 and 8. You know, it's just it just didn't cross my mind. So like, just seeing these films and just getting to like revisit this universe and it's so exciting, and just because there's more stories, like because you get more stories, that means there's more stories, like there's new characters, and there's these like I think it's like the question like who is Rey, who is Finn, who is Poe, like where's Luke, like oh my god, Chewie, we're home, and just it was a combination of nostalgia and the excitement of returning to this world with new characters. And I think that is something that we always see a lot of around the discourse, something that's kind of forgotten around the discourse of the film is that in 2014, it was very clear that these new films were going to be about a new generation. Like J.J. Abrams, like in an article, I believe, I don't know if it was Wired, but I do know for certain it was around that period of time. It's like, this is a story about a new generation. It's about the passing of the torch. And that, we can talk about that in a bit, but like, that was really exciting. Like, there's new Star Wars. It's just new Star Wars. It's just like it's just, there's more and there's more. And and that's what I always go back to. Like the thing that I never understand about some people who don't like this sequel trilogy, and I want to be very clear, like you are allowed to not like anything. Like if you don't like the sequel trilogy, cool. Like you don't have to like any Star Wars. You don't have to like, you can just be a Clone Wars fan. You can just be a whatever, a Legends fan. You don't have to like the new films. But what I don't understand about this, there's a lot of things I don't understand about the discourse. But the one thing that I always kind of go back to, it's like, but there's new Star Wars. Like it's Star Wars, but it's new. It's not, there's more. Just be excited about that. Like the thing that like, I remember like, and this is sort of, this, I think I'll try to bring this back to everything, but I remember there's a lot of discourse around female fans at comic conventions. And a lot of older white men, I was sort of seeing this on Facebook. This is before the new Star Wars films came out. And I was writing pulp novels. Pulp novels are sort of like high adventure stories. And I was writing these things and sort of seeing this discourse like, well, they're not real fans because they just want to get laid. And I'm like, whoa. They're fans. They're female fans. Why are we not excited about this? Like as someone like who was like always wanting like to date someone who a woman who loves these things as much as me, you know, or to degree of it, it's like, why are you angry? Like why are you angry about a young woman liking the thing you like? Isn't that exciting? Isn't that awesome? Like we could share it now. And I remember like, so it's the same thing like with Star Wars, like there's new Star Wars fans. If there's new Star Wars fans, there are more people to talk about it. I had a conversation with this guy I used to work with. He was like, I liked it when Star Wars was like small, like and no one talked about it. I liked it. It was just this thing that I held and everyone like it was a special thing. And I'm like, I get that. But there are more fans. There are more people to be excited with, the things to share it with. Like you and I, we didn't know each other before this. We didn't know each other. There's some people that I've met over the last couple of years because of like Star Wars is growing. It's alive. And it's like, well, you like this thing about Star Wars. Like, well, let's talk about it. It's new. So the thing that I never understand about the discourse around the new films, it's like, you don't have to like it, but be excited there's more. Because if there's more. That means there are more people who will love this thing that you love, and they might not love it the same way that you do, but they still love it, and they love it in different ways, and it's ugh. So the point is like when episode 7 came out, it was just like, or even the talk of it, it's like, I get more. I get to see more. I get to hear more. I get to learn more. I get to discover and go down different avenues of this crazy franchise, which is the reason why I went to college. And I didn't mention this, but right around the time Revenge of the Sith came out, this is one of my favorite stories, and I'm sorry I didn't tell around the same Revenge of the Sith night because I forgot. So if you want to, you can edit this in. So around the time, I'll phrase it this way. So around the time Revenge of the Sith came out, I was working at NYU, as I had mentioned. I was working in the film and TV library, and we were sort of overseeing a lot of the events that happened within the offices and the building of Tisch. And there was a rumor one day. The rumor was George Lucas was coming to NYU. And I went to my boss. I'm like, is it true that Lucas is coming to NYU? And they're like, we can't say anything. I am not allowed to say anything. I'm not allowed to say anything. Okay. Talk to another person I work with. Like, is it true that Lucas is coming? I'm like, what do I do? And he's like, if I were you, I would be by this room at this time. Not saying why, just saying that if I were you, who is a big Star Wars fan, I would be outside this room at this specific time. Okay. I look at my schedule. It's right before my first animation class of that semester. And I'm a really nerd. I'm a huge nerd. I'm like, I don't skip school. I don't do anything. I'm like, I can't miss class. I can't miss class. So I call my mom up, and I'm like, Mom, this is my senior year. So like I'm 21 at this point. I'm like, Mom, what do I do? I can't miss class. My mom says, Adam, what the fuck? Go meet George Lucas. I got to meet George Lucas, and it was crazy. Like I sit there, and this old man sits next to me. We're talking for a while. And I'm like, you're not George Lucas. Why are you bothering me, old man? It's Walter fucking Murch. I find out later because they're talking about THX 1138 is why they're there, the special edition of it. And they go out and they talk, and like it's crazy because like Lucas talks about like how he started working in the entertainment, like doing what he did because he wanted to work outside the studio system. And he's like, in doing so, I became the studio system. Like, that is really self-aware, sir. But I got to talk to, he signed my copy of THX 1138, which is great. I have it here still. And I got to say to him, like, my dad is a huge fan of old school Republic serials. So like, I always understood that's like Star Wars is a serial. I understood that. And then I'm like, oh my God, there's a character called Commando Cody named after my dad's favorite superhero, the Republic serial hero, Commando Cody. And I'm like, sir, I understand what you're doing. So that was awesome. That was one of those moments of like, I got to meet Lucas right before Revenge of the Sith came out. So did that color my reaction to the Revenge of the Sith? Probably.
Who cares? So you got to meet
Lucas.
Who cares?
I got to meet.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. So, yeah. How
many times did you see Force Awakens in the theater?
I want to say 5.
5. So half of Phantom Menace. So you like it half as much as the Phantom Menace. That's what you...
No, if we measure it by that. I'm planning on seeing. So I will say this, like I recently got the Alamo Drafthouse season pass. Alamo Drafthouse, I'm not sure if you guys have it up in Canada.
Oh no, we have nothing.
I'm so sorry. So if you like, this is not a paid advertisement for Alamo Drafthouse. I am not an Alamo Drafthouse shill, but I will say that like it is the best movie experience I've ever had. It's one of those like dine-in theaters where like you get to like they feed you, get dinner and like drinks and stuff like that, and they kick you out like if you like text or tweet or speak too loudly. Like it's just, as someone, one of the benefits of my career has been going to a lot of screenings, movie screenings. Like I saw we'll get to a bit, but I've seen certain films as screenings, and it's like you sit down, everyone's quiet because they have to pay attention to the movie because it's their job. They're respectful of what's going on. Like no one's talking, everyone's just watching the movie. So you go see other movies in regular theaters, and everyone's like, "Look at my cell phone!" Like what are you doing? And you're like, it's so bad. And then you go to Alamo Drafthouse, and everyone's sitting there. They're drinking their drinks, they're eating their food, they're watching the movie, and they're laughing at the right times, and they're interacting with the movies at the right time. But I got the Alamo season pass, which is like, only cost me like $20 for a month, and I can go anytime for it only cost me like $1.75 per ticket per time, so I can get to go so it's like, am I gonna go see The Force Awakens, a Rise of Skywalker 10 times because it only cost me $10? Yes, I am. So no, I wouldn't say I liked it half as much. I think it really was the movie that I wanted it to be in a lot of ways. Is it perfect? No, I don't think even Empire Strikes Back is a perfect film, because you look at Empire Strikes Back and a lot of the when you start thinking about time and how time moves, and how long does it take for them to get from the asteroid field to the Bespin, things like that. Like it starts to break down a little bit. I think it's the closest to, I think probably like A New Hope is probably a tighter film than Empire.
But it's also it's the first one too, right? It's like, it has to be more so, I think.
Yeah. So I think, I don't think Force Awakens perfect, but I think it just felt like Star Wars. I think the thing that I love about the sequel trilogy is that instantly I'm connected to Poe, I'm connected to Finn, I'm connected to Rey. Rey doesn't speak for a good almost 8 minutes. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 8. I can't remember. I know I wrote it down recently. But she doesn't speak for a very long time. But we are invested in her story because of the visual storytelling that Abrams employs. The first time she speaks, it's done in English. And Kylo Ren is this fascinating villain. And, are things not perfectly explained about the political situation? Is the Rathtar sequence sort of superfluous? Yes. But it felt like Star Wars. And seeing our old friends again, and just that cliffhanger with Luke, and also I think one thing that I think a lot about with The Force Awakens in relation to, I remember the criticism that came out, everyone loved it, and then it was it's just a New Hope redux. What I like about that choice, that it's a sort of a New Hope redux, is that it, in the same way that I loved about Phantom Menace, and what I love about A New Hope, it's I love the idea that every trilogy starts with a young orphan from a distant planet destined for greatness. I love that. I love the idea that it's part of the mythic cycle. It's the Campbellian cycle of this person starts here. And I think that from a more metatextual, you have the first cycle, right? And it goes wrong. And he turns, instead of choosing his destiny, he denies his destiny. So then his son has to pick up the sword, and he goes through his arc, and he becomes the hero. And then because of choices he makes, he fails. And then the sword passes to this new generation, a young woman, which I think is again another great choice. She has to pick up the sword and finish the fight that the two other previous generations couldn't complete. And I think just from that sort of larger metatextual standpoint, I love it. So I think Phantom Menace is better. I think The Force Awakens is better than Phantom Menace. I think just it's an infinitely rewatchable film, The Force Awakens.
I won't say this now, I've said this before. There's one thing in The Force Awakens that going into it, I said to my friends, there's one aspect of Star Wars that I hope they keep in The Force Awakens. And I was and I think JJ will. And I came out of the theater and I said, damn it, Abrams, you didn't do the one thing I wanted. I'll tell you that later, because actually, no, the one thing is just the way George Lucas tells a story. It was meeting characters through characters. So, in A New Hope, you have the droids, then, the rebellion, and the stormtroopers, and Vader, and then Leia, and then the droids leave, and then you get into Luke, and then when Luke, you meet Obi-Wan, you meet Han, and it keeps going in that way. And you don't split off until you've met those characters. And Force Awakens, it cut to Rey after Finn, and I was like, I was really hoping. I mean, is that enough to ruin a movie for you? No. So, no. It's just the one thing I'm like, I just love, it's so unique, I find, and just something that isn't thought of anymore that I really like. So you like Force Awakens, which I think is fair to say it made, $2 billion, so you're not the only one.
Yes.
But the biggest question mark after the Disney purchase was this Rogue One film.
Yeah.
They're like, we're going to do spin-offs. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And so the trailers came out, and then rumblings were heard, like, there's behind-the-scenes problems. Did that temper your excitement at all, or did you see it opening night and all that?
Oh, I saw it opening night. Let me temper my excitement. I was really excited about it because, again, new Star Wars is new Star Wars, and I'm getting new Star Wars, and I think it was really great to sort of to see this thing that we had heard about for so long, like the Rebel spies and things like that. I heard about the rumblings behind the set, like, oof, that makes me a little anxious. But then, I absolutely loved the movie when I saw it. Like, I stood up cheering after it. And I'm like, this is great. And I still contend it's a really fun Star Wars film. And I think anyone who follows me on Twitter knows that I'm critical of it.
Yes.
And I think what's interesting about what's happened in terms of film discourses, not just a Star Wars discourse, this is film discourse, is that you either have to love it completely or hate it completely. And there are a lot of Rogue One stans who are upset with me because I voice criticisms of it. And I want to be very clear on this. It's like, I still love it. And I think my criticisms of it, like, I have issues with Jin's arc. I have issues with the way Vader is used. I think the film structure is a mess. And that's partly due to the amount of reshoots. I think that, it comes from a place I'm like, this could have been the best Star Wars film ever. I think that it falls short of that because there are some choices that are made that I think are safe for the sake of being safe. Like, people's like, everyone died. I'm like, yeah, but we all kind of knew that going in.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. Like, I don't know if you are familiar with Patrick Willems' work on, he's become a very good friend of mine, over the last couple of months, not last year or so. But we met because of Star Wars videos and our opinions on it. And one thing that he points to, and I have to agree, is that and we ask someone, like, what's your favorite scene in Star Wars? If they point to the Vader hallway scene, we sort of understand what it is they want out of Star Wars. And again, like, I don't think, again, there's no right way to be a fan of Star Wars. I think there's so many ways to be a fan. It's like, if your Rogue One is your favorite Star Wars film, great. I wish I saw what you see. If that's your favorite scene, that's awesome. Like, that's great. But, like, I think for me, what it means is that what the Vader hallway scene is to me specifically is that it doesn't have anything to do with the story. Yes, it ties into A New Hope, but what I love about the sequel trilogy is that everything it does sort of influences the story. And I can talk about this when we talk about The Last Jedi, but, like, the Vader hallway scene is the same problem I have with, like, having Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan on Jeddah. It's the same problem I have with having Tarkin in the movie, and lots of little things sort of spread out through the film, where they're there to sort of, like, give you the member berries, from South Park. They give you that nostalgia, and it's great in the moment. It's like, oh my God, Vader's being a badass. Like that's exactly what we've always wanted to see. But like, I remember like after the movie came out, after we went to see it, like, what was your favorite part? I'm like, oh, it was when Leia showed up. And I thought about it. I'm like, why is my favorite part have nothing to do with these new characters? Why is my favorite part all about seeing Leia again or Vader again? It's whereas like I look at what's my favorite part of the Force Awakens, it's Rey and Finn and Poe and Kylo Ren. It's those characters that I'm invested in. With Rogue One, it was like these characters are fine, but Jin goes from like, oh, I hate the rebellion to like, rebellion's a bit on hope between two scenes. And then you have, I'm mudding the point. The point is that with Rogue One, I think there were choices that were made that were very, very fun for fans who want to just sort of see these things. And I don't think they come together in the best way. Like, for me, I kind of wish the entire movie had been the Vader hallway scene. Like, what if instead of Krennic, who is a fine character in his own, what if it's Krennic, Vader, who is chasing these heroes down? Like, the Empire finds out about something, they send Vader, like, you are our authority person, like, you are our guy, go get them, and they're being chased. Excuse me. So, like, that whole thing is like, what if it's like they're like it's this race against time with Vader chasing them down, and what if Jin is the one that has like she's the one who's like in the hallway at the end. Everyone else has been slaughtered. It's Jin. She's the last one standing. She's running with this thing, and she's the one that gets stabbed with the lightsaber at the end, passing it off to the 10 to V4, right? It ties Vader directly into our main character's narrative, as opposed to being what is essentially a glorified cameo. And I think that's the thing. Like with The Last Jedi, for example, which I know I'm jumping ahead, but like with Last Jedi, like one of my favorite scenes is what people sort of call a fan service scene, which is when Luke gets the message from Leia. And what I love about that scene is, that is fan service, and he even calls it out. It's a cheap move, but it influences his arc. It ties into where he's going in the story. It reminds us of what happened before, and it pushes him forward. Where I think a lot of the things that are nostalgia based in Rogue One are there for the audience, but not for the story. Yeah.
No, I think that makes sense. But I think for me, when I watch Solo, Rogue One, which are now, I think those things are going to be, relegated to Disney Plus. I think for me watching them, I kind of give them a little bit more leeway because, I look at them kind of like, maybe not the best EU book. I'm like, this is just a little fun story.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Throw it in. And like the Vader scene, what you said is, I think you're dead on. Actually, it's thrilling. Like, and if you read, and you have because you've read them all, Lords of the Sith.
Right.
That's the Vader from that book. And that's what I think for me when I watch them, like, that's the Vader. They're doing that Vader. But you're right. Like, I think the way they handled those type of, Vader probably would have been smarter for them to even have him as a villain. Then you could sell the movie on Vader if you want. Then those reshoots
and they
don't
did.
matter.
And that's the thing. They did.
Yeah,
and that's my... They tried to make it about Vader. Like, he's on the freaking poster. And you're like, where is he?
I forgot he was on the poster.
It's funny because like one of the biggest disagreements I have with Patrick Williams about the new Star Wars films, about like is Maul and Solo, since you touched upon it. Like, I don't find Maul's inclusion as egregious as Vader's, because Vader's sort of like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, why does Krennic go to Vader's castle? It's awesome to see Vader's castle. And to your point, it is one of, if I would say Rogue One is the best EU novel I've read,
Yeah.
Like you said it. It's like, it's a great legend story. It's a great, like, this is a great sort of pocket narrative. But like, why does he go there? Like, what is it? How does it influence his arc? Like, I said this the other day on Twitter. It's like, the Edu scene is where things like break down for me. Like, it's all going in this one direction. There are issues in that first half, And then there's things that happen with Edu and Vader's castle that I'm like, none of this changes the narrative. It is doing the same thing we've already seen earlier with these characters, but we're doing it again. But this time there's Vader, and this time there's X-Wings, and I think, but like with Maul, there's in Maul and Solo, and again, we're jumping ahead, but whatever. With Maul and Solo, like Maul, they talk about the guy we work for Crimson Dawn. He's dangerous. He's dangerous. He's dangerous. He's dangerous. He's dangerous. He's dangerous. Like, you don't understand. He's dangerous. Holy crap! It's Maul, and it's like there are fans. I mean, obviously, if you're a casual fan, like, I thought he was dead. Like, one of my buddies was like, "Wait, didn't he die?" And for me and one of my friends who's not as big of a Star Wars fan, but he's a really big he's involved in transmedia. He's like, "That's genius," and we both agreed on this because it's like, yeah. You don't know he's survived, but now you have to go watch Clone Wars to understand how he did it. You have to go read that story to find out he did it, and it tied things together in a really interesting way. And like it made it, because it was so ingrained in the narrative that like this guy is dangerous, and then finding out it's this character that we recognize. It tied. It was like the carpet and the dude's the rug in the dude's house. It tied the room together. It tied the transmedia together. Whereas I think, but here's the thing with Rogue One, despite my criticisms, that last third of the film is amazing. It's amazing. It's like it's I think ILM, because it's John Knoll's idea. Like, they went to town on that film, and it shows. But I think it's proof of concept that you could tell stories adjacent to the Skywalker saga, that there are more stories to be told in this universe that don't necessarily need to have Luke Skywalker in them. And I think that's great. I think that's like, that's why we're getting the Mandalorian. That's why we you can edit this. That's why we have the Mandalorian. Because because of Rogue One, we know there are more stories that can be told within this universe.
Yeah, and it's brilliant, and that's where the future's heading. How many times did you see Rogue One in the theater?
Twice.
Just twice?
Twice.
I saw it twice as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went from 4 to 2 to 1 to 2. That's how my Star Wars goes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my viewing had nothing to do with how I felt about the movie. It just had to do with time and other things. All right, let's head over to everyone's
the least controversial.
Yeah, I've never heard one bad word about this movie yet. It's called The Last Jedi with Rian Johnson. But before we get into it, I have to know your opinion on this. So in September, before the movie comes out, Colin Trevorrow was fired off of 9.
Yeah.
And I remember this vividly. Everybody's like, Rian Johnson should do it. And there was J.J. Abrams, and there was moans. And then Rian Johnson gets a trilogy, and everyone's as happy as they could be. And then The Last Jedi comes out, and that narrative changed drastically on social media, and especially on YouTube. Everybody listening to this right now, and anyone that follows you knows you like The Last Jedi.
I do.
But you were at Star Wars Celebration the April before it came out. Did you meet Rian Johnson there?
I did. I mean, not personally, but I breathed the same air as him. Let's put it that way. We were. I was producing videos there for Yahoo at the time, and I was in the same room as him doing the press line, and I did get to say to him, like, "Living the dream, man." He was like, "Thanks." And it's funny because I think what we do know, and I don't have any proof of. This is what I've heard, and I think this has been reported at least, so I feel comfortable discussing it. Johnson was offered 9, and he turned it down because, like, I can't do it in the time you want me to do it to make it the film that we all be happy with. And they were like, well, we have such a great experience. And I think this is something that everyone misses about the narrative. Like, everyone has had issues. Like, we know there's been a lot of people fired working at Lucasfilm. Like, Rian Johnson's the only one, like, oh yeah, we have a great time. Let's do a trilogy because everyone got along. And I don't know whether or not Johnson's trilogy is going to happen. Um, I do know that he's the only one who got along with everyone there, and like he's he's the only one who's hasn't been fired yet. It's like, so I mean, I do kind of wish he had done 9. It's like, screw the haters. But at the same time, I'm happy that Abrams is doing it. I think because of two minds. If I do not think, and I've said this before, Last Jedi is not a perfect film. So I've talked to people who had read the script before The Last Jedi came out, and they said like it's one of the best scripts they ever read. And that was, and internally, like everyone, like, this is the best Star Wars that everyone saw. You know, there were certain things that they took out from the narrative, like Finn and Rose's arc was cut down significantly. That sort of made the Canto Bight storyline as divisive as it is, because it sort of removed the certain elements of it, like that really showed what Finn's arc was. I think that, again, I don't think The Last Jedi is a perfect film, but I think what I love about it, and the thing that I keep on going back to, and maybe one day people will hear me on the other side, is that it did what Empire did to Star Wars. You leave Star Wars, A New Hope, you understand exactly what this series is about. It's good versus evil, and the good guys won, and it's always going to be fun. And so you enter The Empire Strikes Back with this specific understanding of what Star Wars is, and then you leave it. And not only is your understanding of this narrative completely changed, this character's understanding of their placement in this universe has changed. You go in to Empire, Darth Vader's the bad guy, Luke Skywalker's the good guy, Leia is like the princess that needs to get rescued, and Han is the hotshot pilot, and he's going to survive everything. You leave that movie, Darth Vader's Anakin Skywalker. He is Luke Skywalker's father. Luke Skywalker is the scion of the bad guy. Obi-Wan lied. Leia is, not the one that needs rescuing. Han's the one that needs to be saved. They fail at our heroes fail at everything they do. And it changes how you understand the narrative. And for me, that's what The Last Jedi does. It gets in there. Your understanding of the story is Luke Skywalker's the great hero we need. Kylo Ren's the big bad guy. Rey is the hero of the next generation, and she might be reconnected to someone somewhere. This is like the good guys are good, the bad guys are bad. And you leave that theater with your understanding of who Luke Skywalker is changed, your understanding of Rey changed, and these characters are understanding themselves differently. Your perspective on Kylo Ren is completely changed. The relationship between Kylo Ren and just the way that Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker's relationship changed, Kylo Ren and Rey's relationship changed. Our understanding of good versus evil in this universe has changed. And that's what I wanted out of a second film in a trilogy. I want to go in with one understanding of it and leaving with a completely different understanding. I think the work they did with Luke and Rey and Kylo is amazing. I think what they tried to do with Canto Bight ties in thematically with this idea that good and evil isn't necessarily binary is really important. And I think Poe's arc is also really interesting, and I think the Hold'em maneuver is awesome. So, yeah.
Hold'em maneuver is awesome. And Canto Bight got shortchanged because they didn't make any toys of those aliens.
Yeah.
Because I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was talking about his son. Him and his 4-year-old son were watching Last Jedi, and his son loves Canto Bight, and he loves the aliens. And I was like, well, he'll never get to play with them, I guess, because, like when I was a kid anyway, Hammerhead, Snaggletooth, all these, they don't have names. I mean, they do, but they don't. Yeah. It doesn't matter. They were awesome toys, and I still have some of them today. And they're not even characters in the movie. They're just extras. And that's partially what Star Wars is. And I think, I don't know who's to blame there, but somebody needs to just produce some Canto Bight stuff. And maybe in the future, we'll all look back on it a little bit more fondly because of toys. That's it. I'll tell you, my one thing, because I want to know your opinion on this, is in The Force Awakens, Rey is waiting for her parents.
Yeah.
In The Last Jedi, she wants to know who they are. And I always thought it was kind of, and I'm really not, I'm not sure where I stand on it. I've always liked the movie. I think my quick review out of it was an 8 out of 10 when I first saw it. And I actually liked it. I just saw it like a month ago for the last time. Yeah. And that was the most I've ever liked the movie. Like I was like, and the Praetorian Guard scene is my favorite scene in Star Wars. I'm going to say that right now. I don't even care.
Oh yeah, it's so the Snoke's death in the Praetorian Guard scene. That was like what the. Yeah. Like, I don't know how much. I was like, which the story's not going the way it's supposed to. Yeah. But another thing I do love about the movie is that it does all the stuff I thought was going to happen in 9. It does everything I thought was going to happen. I like Luke's death, Snoke's death, Kylo and Rey maybe teaming up or whatever. Everything I thought was going to happen in 9 happens in 8.
Try doing a podcast on Star Wars, and you're like, well, what now?
And that's what makes me excited about it. Yeah. But so to your question, well, she does say she does say to BB-8 like she's a mystery. Yeah. So and just because I think that especially when you watch them back to back, what's weird about the discourse around The Last Jedi is that this idea that Abrams and Johnson didn't talk, and that Johnson was like, fuck you, I'm doing my own thing. What we know, and you look at conversations from 2014, 2015, where Abrams we sat down, we talked about where the story's going. Johnson asked me for some changes to do some things. We made some of those, but we were making sure that what he had in mind stayed true to what I have in mind. And he says does he make different choices? Does he take the story in the direction I would have necessarily taken it? No, because he's a different person, and so it's funny. There's a lot of things that I think are said in The Force Awakens that are so open to interpretation that even though they're paid off in a way that stays true to what is said, because it doesn't match what certain fans wanted, it's a disappointment. Han says Luke blamed himself and went away from everything and went looking for the first Jedi temple. That's what he says. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. That's what was revealed. Luke blamed himself. He abandoned everything, and he went looking for. That's exactly what happened. Same thing with Rey. It's just I don't know who my parents. She says it's a big mystery. I'm waiting for my parents, and then she's like, who are my parents? Oh, there doesn't matter. It's funny. It's you if you definitely rewatch it back to back, and you'll see there's a lot of things that get set up and paid off. It's just they're not necessarily what the answers everyone wants. But I remember I have a friend who's I don't like the idea that Luke is Darth Vader's son. That really pissed me off. And he's that really pissed me off when I saw it. I'm really? He's I was mad because that's not the story I wanted. But
wow,
all right,
there's a perspective. I just grew up with that already instilled. Yeah. I knew it was a thing. So that's interesting. That's very intriguing to hear that. That's kind of cool. I like The Last Jedi. Praetorian Guards, like I said, my favorite scene. But obviously it was split. I think we go every year because my dad's birthday is December 20th. So we go me, my parents, my sisters, and groups and friends. So there's 10 to 20 of us go every time. And Force Awakens, I think most people enjoyed it. Rogue One, most people enjoyed it. But The Last Jedi was the one that was really split down the middle. And when I say there's that many people going, it's me and Brock, who I do the podcast with. We obviously love Star Wars. And my parents who introduced me to Star Wars. And then the Star Wars fandom just kind of goes down. Some of them are just there to be there. And I was and most of them like Force Awakens, but this was the one that they all kind of, the casual fans were really the ones that were they were really confused whether or not what they saw with it. Not in terms of what was going on, just was that a Star Wars movie? And then they kind of felt that way after, and honestly, they felt that way after Solo as well. So it wasn't just Last Jedi. It was almost like this shift in tone in a way.
Oh, and I can understand that, but at the same time, again, I point to all the films that we've seen. Look at I'm sure you can do a rewatch before the ones these come out, but rewatch Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back to back. They're very different films. And one thing that's it does beg the question, what is a Star Wars film? And what's crazy about it is Irvin Kershner as a director, made a lot of very big choices that are different than Lucas. Like Lucas is everything's far back.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is in like wide shots and two shots. It's very like documentary style. That's the way he made it. But Empire close-ups, like it radically changes what a Star Wars movie is. And I think that I think that's one of my biggest criticisms of like, one of the biggest criticisms you can place against Return of the Jedi, Force Awakens, those two films, is that they feel so much like Star Wars. It just, you're not doing anything new. Like the thing you can say about Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, Empire Strikes Back, and The Last Jedi, and Rogue One and Solo as well, the majority of the films, is that they do go in different directions. They do push this series in a different way. Like it asks you, the only way a franchise can ever survive is if it changes, if it allows itself to change. There are certain things that at the core of every franchise needs to stay true. The Force is the Force, lightsabers are lightsabers, things like that. Like, for example, I'll use Doctor Who as an example. What I love about Doctor Who, and I mentioned this before, is that it allows itself to reboot every single time. But the things that always stay the same is there's a doctor who's an alien from outer space with two hearts. They are a time traveler, and they have a TARDIS that is a police box that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And they have a companion, and they travel to space, having adventures. But there's so much that as long as that stays true, it can go in every different direction. And I think like this, like what is Star Wars question is interesting, because it's like, if you look at Legends, if you look at the EU, and again, let's use that as an example. Like there is stuff in there that does not feel like Star Wars at all. But here's the funny thing: is that people will point to it as their Star Wars.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing that we have to remember. Like, maybe The Last Jedi doesn't feel like Star Wars in the initial take, just the same way the Phantom Menace didn't necessarily feel like Star Wars to a lot of fans, the same way that the expanded universe doesn't necessarily feel like Star Wars, the Clone Wars doesn't feel like Star Wars, but that becomes ingrained into the franchise. So 10-20 years from now, The Last Jedi is going to be Star Wars for someone, because that's the only Star Wars they've known. So the point is that like, yeah, it might not necessarily feel like Star Wars to an initial fan base, and that's fine. But the only way a franchise can survive is if it grows and if it changes. And I think that's the thing that I really appreciate about the new films, is that in the new era of Star Wars, is that they're like, we need to figure things out. I have this, and I know we're like almost 2 hours in now, but I clearly like Star Wars. The thing is, like, I did an article for Polygon a few months back, and the thesis of it was that for franchises to survive, they need to go into the wilderness every so often. That happened with Star Wars in the EU. It happened with Doctor Who and the New Adventures. It happened with Star Trek, and it happens with every major franchise. The main source of the franchise, whether it be a TV show, a movie, what have you, goes away. So the original trilogy ends. There's no new Star Wars for 16 years. There's novels. There's comics. Doctor Who goes away in 1980 something. It doesn't come back for almost 20 years. There's novels. There's audio dramas. Star Trek goes away in the 1960s. There's a shit ton of novels, and then there's before the Next Generation show, the movies show up. And during that period of time, this wilderness period, creators are able to sort of figure out what can expand their universe. Like they will use the expanded universe, for example. For the longest time, basically this is the original trilogy. They have a little bit of expansion of like the West End games that sort of give backstories to everything. And then the expanded universe goes like, right, here's new characters, here's new ideas. Like it's like, let's introduce the Imperial Remnant. Let's introduce the Yuuzhan Vong. Let's introduce Jaina and Jason and Anakin's Solo, and let's introduce like the Jedi Order and this, that, and that, and then like and Waru and like the this and that, and like it gets crazier and crazier and crazier. Like where you have like at the very edge of this, zombies, stormtroopers, right?
Yeah.
So that has to happen with any franchise, because then it allows us to say, okay, like, look, we know this works. We know the original trilogy works. We know a lot of the stuff in the West End stuff works. We know what the zombie stormtroopers, not so much. But hey, you know what really works? The dark side sun, that works. We want to keep that. We're going to keep an idea of that. All right, we know that we know that like a young Jedi, Jedi female idea works really well. We're going to keep that. And it allows them to sort of figure out the borders of this universe. And I think that's sort of going back to your earlier question, like getting rid of Legends, was that a good idea? Yes, because it allowed them to figure out, we can't go this far. That's not Star Wars anymore. But we can go this far. That's Star Wars. And then that allows them to like, all right, well, we know this works. What if we go over here now? What if we go over here now? What if we become this? What if we become that? And that allows the franchise to stay alive. It allows it to grow. It allows it to introduce itself to new audience members. Isn't that right, guys? Yeah? Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. So everyone, this
Anakin
just so
and
you know,
Obi-Wan.
this is the online discourse. This is the TLJ stance. This is the Phantom Menace right there. So, no. So the thing is, it's like I think that like the point is like, yes, The Last Jedi doesn't feel like Star Wars to a certain section of fandoms, like the Rogue One and Solo. But I think if every film was just The Force Awakens, where it's like, hey, you remember this feeling, it would die out.
Oh,
it
yeah.
would die out. Like it would, like there'd be no point of it. Like the great thing about The Mandalorian is going to be the great thing about The Mandalorian is that it is that plays in that sandbox, but does new things in that sandbox. And the only way you can expand a universe is by trying something and figuring out what's new and what's different.
And Jon Favreau is one of my favorite filmmakers, so I'm basing this only on Swingers and Made, because I think Made is amazing and more people need to watch it. That's what I'm going to say right there. I don't know, just letting everybody know my stance on it. Also, he was on Friends, I think. Jon Favreau on Friends? Yeah, he was. Okay, good. I saw season 1 of Friends. How many times did you see Last Jedi in the theater?
I think I saw about 4 times.
5. So.
I did see it at this. I got to go to a film screening, which was awesome. So like I got to see it like before everyone else, and yeah. I was so happy, and it was great because I got to see it without any like preconceived notions.
Yeah,
I just saw it. It was like there was no spoilers. And like, here I am, and it was like, this is what's great. And then I saw it like later that week, so I saw it twice. And then I think I 3 or 4 times. I definitely saw it. I know I saw it for sure 3 times. Maybe I saw it a 4th or 5th time. I definitely know I saw it 3. I can say for certain 3 times because I can remember off the top of my head 3 times.
Awesome.
So,
and you obviously, like we said, you take away from that movie what I think a lot of people will look for. If people listen to this now or watching this, I think they'll look at it a little bit differently because of your insight that you just brought to it. Because I think people do, and it goes back to what you said about Rogue One and the Vader scene. It's the surface storytelling almost, and this is.
So everyone, for all those of you at home, right now, Puck and Pippin are recreating Twitter for all of you. Well, guys.
Wow, this is.
They're tussling. It's not vicious, but like
no.
they're both boys, so boys fight.
Yeah.
They have to exert dominance.
Oh, they're having fun like on Mustafar. But I was saying it's the surface story, the film watching. You see what's on the surface. You're like, ooh, it's glossy. I like it. It's not what's underneath so much. And then The Last Jedi, you got to peel away those layers, and you're gonna get there.
Yeah.
And like I said, the last time I watched it, I mean, I always liked it, but the last time, and maybe it's because it's 2 years old now, but there was something different about the experience. And I always find the first time you watch, especially a Star Wars movie, like the first time I saw Force Awakens, I'm like, did you see that? I saw that. Oh my God. I saw, and I was so consumed with all like the little nods that the story, somebody was like, that was like A New Hope. I'm like, it was? I was like, and then the second time I was like, I get it now. But the first time I was so like just invested in every little thing that was going on. And I think that's the same with all of them. And you have to just take a step back. And 2 years later, I still stand by the Praetorian Guard scene. The R2 Leia message is up there as well. Like it's just a brilliant, like you said, that brilliant callback, taking you back to what this saga is all about.
Yeah. It's like also like, and Yoda coming in, I think, it's like one of those things where, you can have that comparison now. It's a more direct comparison with like Vader and Rogue One and Yoda and Last Jedi. It's like Yoda shows up and it's like, here's the theme of the movie. And here's this is how I need to help Luke. It helps Luke move forward as a character. That's the kind of fan service I love. And I think like, one of my biggest criticisms with Rogue One is that it feels like fan service the movie. And to a lesser degree, Force Awakens is also fan service the movie. I feel like the kind of fan service I love is the stuff that influences the narrative and the characters. Like the more it does that, like the happier I am. I mean, it's like it says to me that like the stuff I love, the stuff I'm watching, means something to the characters themselves. So. Yeah, and
you know what? Like you said, there's nothing wrong with fan service once in a while, especially when it progresses a story, because that's really what we're there for. Is what that's what Star Wars and all these other sagas and films that we love. We're there for a reason. It's like your favorite band. Right. You like the sound of them. Sometimes change it up a bit, get fresh. Okay, we won't go too deep into Solo because we talked about it, and the Maul thing is really what it is, and I really like Solo. I was looking forward to going into it. I enjoyed it coming out of it. But again, just like Rogue One, this one felt almost even more like an EU novel than a Star Wars film.
It's so much better than the EU novels. Because I read, oh, God. Well, just to say briefly, I really enjoy it for what it is. I think it's a great little short story. I think that's what I liked about it. I thought, like, I was so refreshing to have, for me, like, this is not the end of the universe. It's like this little story set in this universe. And I think, again, I think it would have worked better as a TV series now that we know that we're getting it. Like if those major elements, like imagine like there's like an episode or about him on Corellia, and then there's an episode about him in the Imperial Academy, and then him fighting the front lines, and then him teaming up with Beckett, and have like a series of adventures with Beckett and his crew, and then getting them teaming up with Lando to get the Millennium Falcon. That would have played out a lot better because it would have given everything time to breathe. But yeah, I think it's a fun short story. I think it's a fun little adventure. I think the characters are really interesting, and that's sort of what I'm more invested in. And it's just significantly better than, in my opinion, the A.C. Crispin novels. I wouldn't compare, like, even though there's touchstones to the Han Solo at Star's End, the Han Solo trilogy, who's by a writer I can't remember off the top of my head at the moment. I think Brian Daley, the Brian Daley series. What I think is really great about the thing. I'll try to make this as brief as possible because, again, I know we're going way over time. I think the thing that I always point to for this. So for those of you who have not read the A.C. Crispin novels, spoilers. This is how Han Solo and Lando meet in the A.C. Crispin novels. So at some point, Han Solo gets a bounty put on him by a Hutt. It's like a cousin of Jabba the Hutt, doesn't matter. And who do they employ to get this fill out this bounty? Why? It's Boba Fett. So Boba Fett shoots a dart into Han Solo's back of his neck, and he's like, "Now you, as a Venom, you have to listen to everything I say. So start marching." This is marching, right? And he's going to Slave One, and then all of a sudden, someone out of nowhere attacks Boba Fett and saves Han Solo's life. Guess who it is? It's Lando Calrissian, and he's like, "Why did you save me, Mr. Lando Calrissian guy I've never met? But we're insta friends." He's like, "Well, I understand you're a really good pilot, and I need to learn how to become a pilot because I bought this new ship, the Millennium Falcon." And it's just it's like, oh God, it's so contrived. And fan fiction-y and in the worst way. Because let me be clear, because sometimes I get in trouble with it. Like, I think fan fiction is great. I think if you write fan fiction and if you are doing fan fiction and that makes you happy, go for it. I've done it. My girlfriend reads fan fiction, even though she doesn't know I do. like I think if you like fan fiction and if you write fan fiction, I think that is fantastic. But there's good fan fiction and there's bad fan fiction. And I felt like what A.C. Crispin did in that instance with Han Solo meeting Lando is very bad fan fiction. It's like Han Solo, Lando, and like Han, like it's sort of an inversion of what happens later. Whereas I think what happens in Solo and how they meet, and it's contentious and it's over a sabacc game, just felt so much more natural and interesting than anything that happened in those original trilogy.
Yeah, it was great. And I think, like we said, Disney Plus is the place for those kind of stories, I think, going forward. And the Obi-Wan, what makes me excited about the Obi-Wan series is it's 6 episodes, and it was supposed to be a movie. So the screenplays, were based probably off of a film script and then fleshed out, and we're going to get something really cool. And I'm looking forward to that. All right. Rise of Skywalker time.
Rise of Skywalker,
because we're going to wrap it up. I'm sorry, I've taken all your entire day.
It's honestly my fault because I don't know how to shut up.
No, so Rise of Skywalker is coming out.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this film. I don't know if you are, because it doesn't sound like you like Star Wars, but
I'm very subtle about it.
Subtle.
I don't really talk. I don't talk about Rise of Skywalker at all.
At all. Okay, we'll go over this, but we've had 3 trailers so far.
Yeah.
Have they all hit you equally, or have you taken something different away from all of them?
Say things different away from each of them. I think the last one really hit me in the feels, and I watched that a lot. I think the second one, they've all really excited me. I think like each just kind of served a different purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think like I loved the first one, like seeing Rey with the lightsaber and like spinning down, and then the TIE fighter coming in. But that, like, you didn't really get a sense of what the story was. And then, like, oh my God, Palpatine. And that, like, there was a bit of I will admit, like, there was initial disappointment. I'm like, oh, Palpatine again. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh, well, of course. It's like, who else was it going to be? Like, I think if it had been just Rey versus Kylo Ren, which I think what everyone assumed it was going to be, I think, or like just Rey redeeming Kylo, whatever it was, is going to be those two sort of as antagonists. I sort of like, well, the thing I was most worried about with 9 was like, how do you tie this all together? Like, because I think that episode 7 and episode 8 are really great additions to this franchise, but at the same time, with the exception of like returning cast members and sort of tying into like these bloodlines and stuff, it did run the risk of being sort of like, well, how does this fit into the larger narrative? Like, where does this fit? And I think that with that bringing in Palpatine, it's like, well, yeah, he's been in the majority of the saga. He's been in all 3 prequels. He's been in name dropped in episode 4. He was a cameo in episode 5, a major player in the same way that Snoke was a major player, and he was a major player in episode 6, Return of the Jedi, and it makes sense if he's in the villain for the majority of the saga. Why wouldn't he be back? And it's interesting because you think about it this way. It's like, so, and I mentioned this, he's featured in 3 films, name dropped in a 5th film, and the 4th film. Boys, I know, I'm excited about Palpatine too. Come on, boys. I know. This is what happens with cats. So let's start from the beginning on this one. So I don't know how much time we're in this, but so take a look at Palpatine. He's in episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. He is name dropped in episode 4. He is cameo in episode 5. He appears in episode 6. He is ignored in episode. The only one he's not named in is episode 7, and then episode 8 he is named directly Darth Sidious, and he is in episode 9. So yeah, 8 of the 9 films, he is a presence. So it kind of makes sense. And then the second trailer was really cool to start seeing it in context of the whole saga. And this last one was like, oh man, this is going to be epic. So the thing is, it's like, we sort of touched upon it before, like, I'm kind of bummed that Johnson's not directing episode 9, because I think that I would have loved to see where he would have taken it. But at the same time, I think Abrams is such a good storyteller in terms of scale, in terms of not necessarily fan service, but like really making the audience sort of invested in a story, and giving them a roller coaster of a ride. I think that the way Johnson sort of cleaned the slate for him, it allows him to tell a really exciting story with the new status quo in episode 9. Like, you have that really interesting relationship with Kylo and Rey. Whether or not they get together is depending on your ship. It's great. If you're Reylo, great. If you're not, great. Just be kind. I think the thing is, like, whether or not, no matter, there's such an interesting dynamic that Johnson left him, that I think that if you can use that to tell a really exciting story that ties everything together, that's great.
Yeah. What do you think of Dark Rey? I want to know your opinion. Dark Rey right away. That's blowing up, and it's something for me when I first saw the Force Awakens full trailer. When Rey shoots the gun, I was like, oh, she's filled with anger and hate. Yeah. And I've been waiting for her to go dark. Obviously, I don't think she will be going dark, but what were your thoughts on that?
I will say this. Same thing, like going into episode 8, I would not have wanted Rey to go dark. I thought it was possible at the end of episode 8. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, this could possibly happen. I don't like it in terms of a story choice. Like, I've had friends who are like, they're like, a better choice would have been if Rey had gone with Kylo. I'm like, why? Like, that's clearly not the story they're telling. Yeah. Like, she's the good guy in this story. Like, it's just the same old story. I'm like, I don't know. I just didn't see her going dark. I don't see her going dark. I think it's a vision.
Yeah, me too.
But I will say, look, again, like, thanks to the choices that Johnson made in episode 8, I honestly believe it could happen because of those interesting choices he made. But yeah,
I just think it's a cool visual. And
yeah,
and I was like, I couldn't believe they put that in a trailer, which is why I try to think that it's just a vision or something. But at the same time, who knows? I don't know, and I don't want to know until
I just like I just like that I don't know what's gonna happen. I think I know what's gonna happen again. And like, there was like the leaked image I saw, the one, and I won't say what it was. It's like I saw it, I'm like, well, yeah, like, yeah, that, of course that's taken. Like, I'm like, if this is real, and I don't know if it's real because I didn't investigate, because I didn't want to investigate, but like, if this is real, this conforms with what they're saying in the trailer. So it's like, yeah, I'm not surprised. So the leaked image that I saw, even though I didn't investigate it and I don't know how real it is, it does conform with what they're saying in the trailer. So it's like, oh, based on the things I saw in the trailer, I'm like, that does not surprise me. I'm just kind of bummed that, like, it's like an image that, like, I'll know what to expect now. But I don't know. I just like that I don't know what's in general, I don't know what's going to happen. I think I know what's going to happen, but at the same time, I thought I knew it was going to happen in Force Awakens. I thought I knew it was going to happen in Last Jedi. It's like, I don't know.
and you know, that image, when you go into the theater, you'll have that in the back of your head. But the movie, I'm sure it's not the opening shot of the movie. So by the time you get there, the movie might be so engaging that you might not even be thinking of it. And then when it happens, you're like, oh yeah, I know that's happening. Like, it might be one of those. Yeah. So hopefully, anyway, I'm trying to steer a positive spin on this.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping
again, like like I say, like, it's not. It doesn't seem any surprise in general, but like, there's like a specific thing about it. I'm like, I would have liked to have not seen that, if that makes any sense.
I understand what you're saying, and that's why I'm really hesitant on typing Star Wars in Google now. And Google Images is, I have to be very specific on what I type now for Star Wars images now, because I'm like, if I type the wrong thing, I'm gonna see Dark Rey fight Light Rey, or like something's gonna happen. And I'm not going to want to see that until it happens, because something's out there. Well, you've confirmed that you've seen something, so that's where I am.
There is something that I don't know if you want to talk about. I have been to Galaxy's Edge.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. I want to hear all about Galaxy's Edge, and thanks for inviting me. That's cool.
So one thing that happened this year has been a very so you've been asking me a lot of questions about my Star Wars fandom. One thing that I've been very lucky to have had happen to me is that my career has taken a direction that I'm allowed to be a Star Wars fan professionally. If I think about it too much, I get misty-eyed, because it is very... I've worked very hard to get to this point, and I've worked very... I've tried... It's been one of those things where, I've worked in a lot of different parts of the entertainment industry over the last decade or so. It's probably 15 years now. And I've found my way into a part of the industry talking about entertainment. Even though I would love to write a Star Wars novel, I'm very open about that. The people who work at Del Rey know I want to write a Star Wars novel. I know a lot of people. I would love to be a creative force, just in general. I always say, my dream is to be a writer full time. That's something that I would love to do. That being said, the best second up runner-up prize is the career that I've had, the one that just pays the bills, and that's being an entertainment producer, and that's talking about movies and TV. And I don't like saying blessed, because I think that sort of takes away from the work I've done. I've worked very hard to get to a point where I do what I do for a living. I've just, I've made the right contacts. I've busted my ass left and right. And this year, I've had the chance to do a lot of amazing things that are related to Star Wars. Obviously, I went to Star Wars Celebration this year, where I met some amazing people. I got to meet Alex and Molly from Star Wars Explained. I met, Brian Shee, who has his own podcast. There's so many amazing people that I got to meet. I got to meet Ash Crossan, Matt Martin. I got to meet Justin Bolger, Kristen Baver, Dan Brooks. I met so people from Lucasfilm and who are involved, whether it be the story group or whether it be the just the ancillary entertainment stuff. I've gotten to know Jason Fry. I met Delia Dawson. I met all these people that I really I've known and met because of my career. And it's one of those things that I never expected, and it's all because of the stuff I've done. But I got to go to Celebration. But one thing that happened towards the end of my time at Yahoo was the opening of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And I said to my boss, I'm like, look, if you get an extra ticket, I understand we don't have the budget. I will fly myself out there to go. He's like, all right, okay. I got an email, a Slack message, and he's like, are you serious about flying out? I'm like, yes. It's like, well, Kevin, who is one of my other coworkers, can't make it. We have 2 passes. So if you want to come to the opening ceremony, opening day of Galaxy's Edge, and if you can fly yourself out and take care of everything else, you're in. And I looked at my girlfriend. I'm like, I'm going to Galaxy's Edge next week. And it was one of those things where I said to her, it's one of those things where I'm being paid to go out there. Even though I'm not, it just made sense. I always wanted to go to this place. I didn't think it'd be for 5 years or so, but I'm going. I'm going to go, and it's going to, I can do this, be there for the opening sequence, the opening ceremony. So I got to be there with all Lucas and Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill and Paul Iger were there. I was standing at I was right by Brie Larson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kevin Feige, just name dropping it's cool. I just got to be around these people. But for me, what was so amazing was being in Star Wars. And I thought for certain I was going to cry when I saw the Falcon. And you can see there's a photo of me. It's on my Twitter page. You can see me in front of it. I want to be buried in that photo. I love that photo so much. I thought I'd cry seeing the Falcon because it's there and it's real. But being in this immersive experience and drinking blue milk for the first time, and like green milk, and all these things, it's just like being, and we talked a little bit about it, like what's so amazing about Galaxy's Edge is, in the same way that I love the novels and why I love the new canon and this new films, is that I'm exploring this universe. I got to explore this universe and be a part of it. The lightsaber build is the best thing you can ever do.
Oh, what?
This thing is amazing. I can't, like, I pick this up every so often, and just I'm like, this is my lightsaber, and it's great because the lightsaber can come in and out. The experience is amazing. Like I said to my girlfriend before I left, I'm like, I'm buying a lightsaber. I'm going to build my own lightsaber.
Yes.
And she's like, it's your money. I'm like, no. You don't understand. I'm building my own lightsaber. And like, you have to accept that I'm coming back with the lightsaber. I pick this up every so often. I'm like, this is my lightsaber. And like, the thing is, like, it's modular, so I can like move things around and I can change things. But like, I'm like, no, I made this choice. This is the build I'm going to do. And it's green.
So you went with the green?
Yeah, I went with the green. But like, I'm sure you people know about this, but like, you can get the green lightsaber is made because it's a green kyber crystal. And like, if you can buy extra kyber crystals, and that's pretty cool because and that's what broke me. Like, honestly, that, like, I was there with I was standing next to Geek Girl Diva, and Kristen Baber was there as well. And we were one of the first, like, I was there with Jermaine Lucier as well, same one. And if you watch the LA Times video of the experience, you'll see me in the background. And I was like, that was the first thing I did once, like, the park opened, after I did all the interviews I needed to do, after I did all the the schmoozing I needed to do, and like stuff like that. The park opened, and I went straight to the lightsaber build. And like, I had asked, and I was like, because I asked, like, when are you opening? Like, this is the time. I was like the third person online, and I said to them, like, I had to go full on in this, and I'm so sorry. I know I'm keeping you from like life, but I'm like, the thing I was like, I want you say, like, I need some lightsabers, and like, we don't sell lightsabers here, sir. I'm like, well, then they're like, we only have scrap metal. I'm like, well, then I need some scrap metal for my YT 1300. What kind of scrap metal do you have? And I don't want to spoil the experience, because the experience is so great, but like, they show you like the options that you have, but like, they're like, there's like little drawers on the side. I don't know if they have it now, but they did when I was there, because I know it's been crazy there. Like, they're like, we have this one. It's like, that sort of Old Republic one, that's mine, which is more like original trilogy. One that's like a little bit more like ancient Old Republic, like, so like, there's prequel era, original trilogy era, and then like the Old Republic, and then there's a fourth one. And I'm like, what's the fourth one? Like, well, that's Sith artifacts. Like, well, I don't deal with Sith artifacts. But the moment that broke me, the moment that almost made me like just start weeping, was when they brought out they bring out the kyber crystals, and they're glowing in this tube, and you're like, oh my god, it's real. and like I can't tell you, like this thing weighs like about 2 pounds. It's metal. It feels like a lightsaber. And it's just so wonderful. But like, yeah, you can get different kyber crystals. I've got Alex and Molly were really kind enough. They went there and they got me the white crystal when I was, because I got the blue crystal and the green. I got the blue. You get the green crystal when you go there. You can choose purple, green, blue, and red, and I chose green. Then I bought blue because I was trying to save money, and so I only got the blue. But then Alex and Molly were again kind enough to get me the red and the yellow.
Oh wow!
Sorry, the white and the red. And what's cool, like, you have the holocron. And obviously, like, again, you press it, and people know it's alright, but like,
this is Master Obi-Wan Kenobi.
It's the old from Rebels.
Both our Jedi Order and
but
Republic have fallen.
Sometimes it doesn't always work. I will say that. But what's cool is that every so the crystals are all different cuts, and depending on the cut or depending on the one you get, it has a different voice. There we go. And this one was the white. Nope. It's not working. There we go. This is cool. Come on.
unconventional Jedi. I followed his lead, which wound up saving my life.
So that like what's cool is like if you get like a different light, like it could be someone different. And that's all new audio that they recorded with Ashley Eckstein for Ahsoka.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and it's so cool. I mean, the entire experience is amazing. I really want to get the I'm trying to get the I have to the cookbook because it's so cool. It's just like you're like I want yip, and you're just like it's living in Star Wars, and there's nothing like it, and I can't recommend it enough. The experience is so wonderful, and it's so. If you love Star Wars, it's like if you're mad that like there's not Luke walking around, or there's not not Vader walking around. That's current trilogy. It's like get over yourself. You get to fly the goddamn Falcon. You get, like,
I can't wait to go.
Dude, you get to live in Star Wars. You get to live in Star Wars for a few hours. The cantina's amazing. Patrick, when he went down, he got me this because I'm like they were out of kyber crystals because like no one's going, but everyone's buying kyber crystals. He got me this mug. I'm like it's so stupid. I have to have this. It's looks like it's actually possible. I'll just show it to you. So, all right. So, apologies on. So my friend Patrick went there and he got me this. Let's turn a little bit loud here. It is the Endor, the celebration of.
Oh my god!
It looks like it's carved into wood.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I love drinking beer out of this because I'm like I have to celebrate victory. So
that's so cool.
It's such an amazing experience, and like as someone who's been obviously a lifelong Star Wars fan, just getting to live and breathe in it for a little bit, it's amazing. Yeah,
I can't. I think I'm going to be going with everybody else that loves Star Wars before Star Wars Celebration, and I'm next year. So I'm gonna.
That's my plan. Yeah,
I want to plan my trip to go either before everybody gets there or after everybody gets there.
After, yeah.
Which I'm sure everybody's playing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won't be going the Saturday of Celebration, I'll tell you that. There's
you gotta go like the Tuesday or something.
Yeah, exactly. Go on those ones. That was awesome. So how many do you have tickets for opening night for Rise of Skywalker?
Rise of Skywalker. Yes. So this is the best part about it. I got it. I literally got my tickets as I was driving away from Lucasfilm. Like the same boss who I mentioned who went with me to go see Revenge of the Sith texts me. He's like, tickets are on sale. I take my phone out and I'm just like and like I got him at I got 2 tickets at 6 p.m. December 19th at the Alamo Draft House. I'm hoping that I also get to go see to the screening because I get invited to all the Disney screenings, which is terrible.
Yeah, that sounds like. Ugh, can you just let me know and I'll take that for you because you don't want that in your life. Yeah, that's amazing.
I'm hoping to go to the screening. If not, at least I know I can go see opening night. I am. I can't believe we're getting episode 9, man. I just like how cool is that? Like we get to see the end of the Skywalker saga. Like. Look, I'm not gonna. Nothing I can say will convince anyone of their opinion on the sequel trilogy. But for me, it's just. I like that we're getting an ending. I like that we're. It's just I can't believe it. It's like episode 9. Like I'm still shocked we got episode 1.
It's true.
So like I don't know. I'm so excited. I am. We are one day closer to seeing Star Wars Episode 9: The Rise of Skywalker. It's like 22 days from now. It's. How can you not be excited?
Thanks to Adam for that conversation. It was awesome to hear everything he had to say about Star Wars. If you want to pick up a copy of his book, The Green Llama, you can do so on Amazon right now. Check it out. You can follow him on Twitter and just read and watch what he's got to say, because your Star Wars life will be richer because of it. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching, for listening to the Outlander Club right here on the Rebel Scum podcast. My name is James Razile, and as always, may the force of others be with you.
May the force be with you. Goodbye, old friend. May the force be with you.
Yippee!